Richie, coming out of the bye week, not a lot of warm and fuzzies, I don't think, right now for us to think about, but we certainly can kind of talk through some things. Let's start out really positive, something that nobody probably wants us to do. What have you been most impressed with about this team? I know there's not a lot. I know we're 1-5. I'm not trying to make jokes. But has there been anything that you can kind of look at and say, like, okay, I'm happy with this. Even, okay, not even maybe most impressed, just like moderately impressed with that you'd give like an A, B type grade to?
I'm not sure. I think Ja'Kai Douglas has been Ja'Kai Douglas, what we expected. He's Mr. Slow and Steady. He's not a wide receiver one, but, that's okay. You don't have to be. But I do think he's been reliable this season at the wideout position, which you haven't had a whole lot of reliability on the offensive side of the ball. I think Josh Farmar's had a fantastic season, quite frankly. I know the defense has had extreme struggles on third and long, but down to down, first and second down defense, I'm happy with it. It's just unfortunate that they can't seem to get off the field on third down. And I think special teams, I mean, you got to be happy with Mastromato and Ryan Fitzgerald. When you're 1-5, when you came into the season with college football playoff aspirations, it's hard to find a whole lot to be excited about and happy with. But I think those things really stand out. And I know he didn't have a great game in totality against Clemson, but I was encouraged by what I saw from Brock Glenn. And we'll talk more about him maybe a little later today and definitely on Wednesday. But I was encouraged with what I saw from him. I think he took a step in his development that you could hopefully build upon. And, like a special teams is probably the biggest satisfactor of what we have so far this season for me. But I think the defensive line as a whole, I'd like to see more out of Marvin Jones Jr. I think Pat Payton has actually been pretty good. And this is so cliche, and I hate to even say it, but the team really doesn't look like they've quit. They just don't look like a great football team.
Yeah, that's a pretty elementary thing, not on for your standards, like just in general. That's like, it's sad that like our big positive, our big takeaway is that like they haven't quit. Like, congratulations on playing hard. That, the game you're getting paid tens of, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to play at this moment. Like, thanks for not quitting, which is frustrating to even think that you would have to say that. And that be your big takeaway through the first half of the year. I would agree with you. Ja'Kai Douglas been up, kind of an, old, reliable. I think Toafili has run hard at times. I think that's been, something that you like to see. I will say, like, I mean, we're really, pulling from the bottom of the barrel here. I'm not trying to be funny about this or at all. I'm glad that they've somewhat gone to a little bit of a youth movement. We talked about that last week. I hope that kind of continues and they continue to go that direction. And I think they will. I think that, you got guys that probably are starting to make some business decisions. And I don't even mean like Peyton or Farmer or anything, but I think you probably are trying to look for more of what you have in the future. They've played relatively hard. Like you said, they're just not very good. I was somewhat encouraged with the way that Brock played. Obviously, the encouraging parts of Brock playing well are also frustrating because he didn't play well or he didn't get in earlier. But yeah, I mean, I think there's some positives to take away from it. But yeah, not a ton, right? Like, The kicking game been pretty good. Hard to complain too much about that. You're having to kick too much. Last year, so speaking of Guthrie's, last year Guthrie sponsored the Red Zone. So every time you get in the Red Zone, whether you're listening on the radio or you're in Doak, they'd be like the Guthrie's Red Zone. And he was like, man, I'm getting a killer deal on this. Well, not so much. We never get in the Red Zone. And Guthrie's is kind of rethinking that investment and wondering if they can get some money back on that. So no, I'm just kidding to the people at Legends that are probably listening and like, nope, you're not getting any money back. So, but yeah, that's certainly not been, well, okay. there's a list of things. We'll do this side and then we'll move on because we don't have to just be negative all night, but well, kind of where we are. I'll get right back to it. But first, I do want to give a little bit of love to our friends over at Survival Meds. Now, some of my really good buddies introduced me to Survival Meds, and they have two products that I absolutely love. Their Force Multiplier and the Test Fire. If you know that you need to be on a multivitamin or you just need a little extra boost, go check out both products linked in the description. I have been personally taking them, and I promise you that you won't be disappointed. I see the analytics on this page, and I know most of you are my age or older, and I know you guys are probably like me and need to be taking better care of yourself. So go check out the products that Survival Meds has today. What have you been most disappointed with? Like, is there one or two things? I know you could probably say a billion things, but is there one or two things that you could put at the top of the list that you've been most disappointed with?
Being number 133 out of 133 teams in the country in rushing yards. That I'll start there. That's not great. But yeah, offensively, it's the rushing attack. It's been non-existent. And if you listen to Mike Norvell before the season, he said, this offensive line is the best he's had, the deepest he's had. Well, where the hell are they? Again, you are 133 out of 133, and it's not like other teams have played more games than you. Like, everyone's pretty much played 6 games at this point. That part is just mind-boggling because Mike Norvell's been able to run the ball everywhere he's been. That's kind of been a staple of his offense. He's always, even with Jordan Travis, he wanted to run the ball and establish a ground attack. And then I guess, I touched on it, a few minutes ago, but the third down defense, it's so frustrating because the defense, again, on first and second down, they seem to be average, maybe even above average. And then they just give up a 3rd and 9, a 3rd and 12, a 3rd and 13, doesn't matter. But the rushing attack is what's really baffled me the most, how that we cannot run the ball at all.
Yeah. The rushing attack is terrible. Offensive line being bad, certainly impacts that. And teams just, it's part coaching, right? It's part of the offensive line not being as good as you thought it would be. And it's also part, teams knew that we couldn't throw the ball. And so why not just stack the box against them? We're so predictable. Now, I didn't expect Brock to throw it 40 plus times. And so that to me is a, I don't know that I want him throwing it 40 plus times every game, but we also got down. I don't expect Duke to score on us like Clemson did. And so you had to throw more than maybe you wanted to. But I do think that the threat of Brock's legs and the threat of Brock's arm probably opened some things up for the running game. Also, not playing defenses named Clemson. The running attack against Clemson was just absolutely, putrid for sure. So yeah, the running game to me, awful. The defensive line, would probably be the other so if those were yours, mine would be the other side. Now, running game is probably the top, right? I'd probably put DJ up there pretty high too. Not to list every single thing, but the other side being the defensive line. Kind of thought this defensive line was going to just dominate games and take over. And they did a good job against Cal and Memphis. Not that, at the end of the day, that's Cal and Memphis, and they've done okay since then too. But defensive line, that's been a disappointment to me. Even though I think Farmar has played pretty well, Pat's come around a little bit. Jackson is not nearly the player that I think we thought we would be getting. And then MJJ, whatever. I don't want to crush on a kid too much. He's looked a little bit better recently. Yeah. He just, I thought when we took MJJ, I said in the Discord, right, that was kind of a depth piece for me. I thought he could be really good in 25. And the fact that you couldn't get anybody else, you missed out on Scrouton and you missed out on other defensive end targets, kind of proved that Florida State kind of thought the same thing, that they didn't necessarily want to start that kid, and they had to, and you've had to live with the results. It's not MJJ's fault that he's not really ready or wasn't ready at the beginning. Maybe he turns it on second half. So, defensive line been certainly a down spot. I think Mike Norvell's coaching's been pretty down. He doesn't look like you know what they always said about Mike was his energy, man. You just get there and it's 4 a.m. It doesn't matter. It's midnight. It doesn't matter. It's 6 p.m. It doesn't matter. Always got so much energy, man. He looks dead on the sideline. And I like Mike. I think he's a good Christian guy. I want him to work out. I want him to be Bobby 2.0. I do. I want all that. I like him personally. I'm not like these Gator fans that hate Billy Napier and want him dead. I like Mike Norvell. I want him to work out. Any criticism of Mike Norvell is criticism because I think he's not living up to the standard that he himself sets. But I like Mike. I want him to work out. All that said, he looks dead inside. Like and 1-5 will do that to you, right? Like I'm not even saying like I mean, do I look happy on here most weeks? No, I don't. But he does not look like the same guy, and it sucks, man. Because I like Mike. I don't enjoy Mike looking miserable on the sideline or being miserable in press conference or anything like that. But man, when they were 4-0, he still, or I'm sorry, 4-0, 0-4 in 21. He had some passion. He had some fire. He doesn't have that anymore. I don't know.
No.
I don't know where that's gone. So, all right, I will ask this because we do skew pretty positively, even during a bad year. Florida got to go through a bye week. They beat Mississippi State, and then they got to go through a bye week, and they totally dominated UCF. Now, that game got close late. UCF's not very good. They lost to Cincinnati. They got blown out by Colorado. And then they nearly beat, if not for Napier being a terrible coach, they should have beat Tennessee last night too. Like, if he doesn't bungle that so pathetically, which again is probably why he's going to get fired before the end of this year, they beat Tennessee, a top 10 opponent that probably shouldn't be top 10, but on the road in Neyland with 100,000 fans there, blah, blah, blah. Do you think the bye week could have a similar effect for FSU? Like, do you think 2 weeks with Glenn, you're playing Duke, then Carolina, Charleston Southern, Florida's not very good either. Do you think the bye week, now I don't think you beat Miami. I don't think you beat Notre Dame. Could the bye week have a similar effect here, or am I just being super hopeful there?
I definitely think it can. And you got to think about Brock Glenn, the situations he's been thrown into. He's never had more than 5 or 6 days notice that he was starting for a football game. It's just, that's unfortunately the reality for him. Now, for him to go out against Clemson, at least look somewhat comfortable. Again, it wasn't a great game. I'm not going to sit here and say, he's Jameis 2.0. He's not, but he looked comfortable, and he does have that moxie to him that I don't think anything really is going to phase him. And now for him to have 2 full weeks of practice with number 1 reps for 2 full weeks, knowing he's starting the game against a not great opponent. Look, I know Duke is 5-1. They're not a good team. I'm sorry. I know they're favored by, I think it's 3 points now is the last spread I saw. But I just think the recipe is all there for Florida State to really come out. And I hate to say this, man, this sucks as a Florida State fan, get back on track with a win over Duke, because that's kind of the wrap and what we need. But I do think the bye week, I think it came at the perfect time with DJ, going down. And I think we've seen the last of DJ. I know there's reports that he'll be back and he could start again. I don't think that will be the case unless Brock is just terrible. And I don't expect Brock to be terrible. I don't expect him to be elite or great, but I think he can be solid for you. And I think he's a better option for you in this offense. But yeah, I think the bye week comes at the perfect time. And I think Florida State, we'll talk more Wednesday. I've not picked a score or anything like that yet, but if they can't use these 2 weeks to go out, get Glenn ready, look at film, have Mike Norvell point at the tape and say, hey, Brock, great play here. You're just missing by a little bit. Or, hey, what were you thinking on this throw? Because we cannot have this moving forward. You now have that opportunity for 2 full weeks. And I know, to your point, Mike doesn't have that same passion on the sidelines that we saw. When we saw him grab Deuce Spann and just coach him up in that Syracuse game, that was some of the best coaching I've ever seen on a sideline on a game day. We're still looking to find that Mike Norvell again, but he's still a workaholic. He's still putting in the time, putting in the hours, watching the tape, getting the team prepared, getting the coaches prepared. I do think that this was a much needed bye week. I think if we played Duke yesterday, they probably beat us. I'm not so sure moving into Friday, but again, we'll get more into that on our Wednesday show.
So my buddy Alan, we used to do the spaces on Twitter, and my buddy Alan in Tampa used to call in a lot. If you guys were on the spaces, you remember he'd be the guy that was always out on like the big old tractor or something, like moving dirt or whatever. Newberg would ask him what he was doing. So Alan told me he grew up in Alabama, and I don't remember who the coach was. It's obviously well before Saban, or whatever. Said that he lost a game. I don't remember who the game was to, but they lost a game, or they had lost their second game in a row or something like that. And Alabama fans literally called for a scheduled delivery for like a moving truck, like a U-Haul, to be parked outside his door the next morning. Now, he didn't get fired that week, but like that's how ruthless Alabama fans were for just like, I think it was just like the first loss of the year, second loss or something. I don't know, whatever it was. Like, it was kind of outrageous. If Mike, as much as I like him, starts DJ in another game, absent like injuries to your next 2 guys, like if a couple guys get, whatever. If Mike just chooses to start DJ over either Luke or Brock, I will be the one to call the moving truck. Like I will be the guy in Allen's story that calls and I think I won't be the only one. Fans will, whatever goodwill Mike still has from 13-0 or 10-3, which is fading. If he starts DJ another game, which I don't suspect he will. I've been told DJ's done for the year. I think that there are going to be a lot of fans that are just like all the way out on him.
I'll tell you a story because Florida State fans we are a passionate bunch, right? My freshman year, we lost at home to Wake Forest 30-0. The next day, Bobby Bowden, the legend, that he is a statue, he is Florida State. He had for sale signs put in his front yard by fans. That's how
That's wild, man.
If they're going to do that to Bobby Bowden, yeah, Mike, you don't have that leash. You lose to Duke, it's going to be a problem. And again, to your point, TJ, we both like Mike. We think he loves his players more than most coaches probably do. He's not trying to start fights with other quarterbacks like Kirby Smart and things like that. But give me Kirby Smart if he's going to fight a quarterback, but give me national championships. But yeah, no, Mike, this really is a must win for him. Yeah. He's not going to be fired at the end of this year, but the calls for him to be fired will escalate rapidly if he loses this game, because there's not a whole lot of wins left on the schedule after that. Charleston Southern, maybe Florida, but I think Florida beats us as of where we stand right now today. I think DJ Lagway is a hell of a talent in the future of that program. Yeah, like this is a must-win game for Mike Norvell for his future, because even if you come back next year, say you finish this year 3-9, generous, and then next year you go 7-5, that's not good enough. Like if the money's there, he'd be gone. I just don't think the money's there.